Hey guys, it's Justin again with another work in progress for the SD resin Zaku. This is the point where the work in progress is going to start slowing down a little bit, because this is where I have to actually start putting in some of the harder work. When I left off last time, I showed you how to cut your resin parts out. I showed you how to clean them. I showed you how to organize and make sure that all your stuff's there, stuff like that. So with this one, now that everything is fully cleaned up, well, presumably fully cleaned up, you won't actually know until you've primed, we're going to dry fit. What I like to do first is dry fit to make sure all my pieces fit together as they're intended, and I can use what I've learned from that to figure out what I need to pin, if pieces need to be reformed and stuff like that. And that sounds a lot worse than it actually is. It's just if a piece is like molded in a certain way, or it sits for long enough in a certain position, it'll kind of stay bent that way, and you just have to kind of help it back into the right position. So a little bit of warm water, well, hot water, and some time, and that will be how you fix that. So what I've got here is a couple pieces for the torso and the pieces for the head, and we're just gonna dry fit them and see how they work together and stuff like that. We've got the mono eye piece here, and this plugs right into the bottom of the head as you would expect, and it even moves around if you want to, so that's really cool. Then you fit this piece over top of that, and that covers all that stuff right there. Fits pretty good so far. Next you put your mouth guard on there, and it's a little loose. There's not really a whole lot holding it on, so we'll probably have to glue that in place, which is fine because it won't cause any problems when we put the top piece on as well, which is one thing we need to look out for. Next we put our eye shield in, which I'm not sure I'm going to be using because I don't like the way that, like how foggy it is. Maybe if I can clear that up a little bit, I might use it, but right now it's not looking like that's going to be a thing. So then we put the top of the head on, and it resembles a Zaku very much. Then we plug the power pipes in. And there we go. So the Zaku 2's head is complete, with the exception of the command horn. That fits very loosely in here, so I don't want to lose it, but it looks fine as it is. So not a lot in the way of cleanup. I might putty this up a little bit, and just mask it off so that that little seam isn't there. I'm also thinking about scribing a little bit on this. I'm not entirely sure yet, just because I want to add a little bit of detail to it, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So next is the torso. The torso's got a couple pieces and a couple neat little construction bits here. So first we're going to put the two halves together, and we're going to put the cockpit hatch over there, and that kind of stops the chest from wiggling around too much. These are kind of loose fits, so you want to kind of hang on to it as you're putting it together so pieces don't go flying all over the place. Now, there's a little bit of a gap here, so I'll probably have to do a little bit of fixing on that as well, and just make sure that that's bent just a little bit in the other direction. And the same thing seems to be going for this. Just a little bit, not very much. And there we go. That's why you hold on to your pieces, because they tend to fly all over the place if you're not careful. But otherwise the fit is really nice. It looks as it should. Pop the neck on there, and then you can easily just pop the head on top of that, and it looks very much like a Zaku. And the next piece is the backpack. It's pretty much just plug and play. And the reason I showed this is because there's a huge gap on both sides. So what I'm going to have to do with this is take this piece and kind of soak each side in hot water. Do it one at a time, and then I'll just kind of put it back on and kind of bend it where it needs to be, and then leave it there for a little while, and hopefully with any luck it will reform properly and it will fit like that without my fingers all over it. But so far that's the only major one I've seen. Nothing else seems to be too bad. So another thing is, if you want to keep dry fitting and you want to see what the whole thing looks like together, go ahead and grab yourself some blue tack. I don't know where I put mine. I had it, but I can't remember where I put it. So you just grab that. And put some of that between your pieces and stuff like that, and then you can get it standing and get an idea what your finished kit's gonna look like, and any problems you might encounter. So if you give me a moment, I will come back and we will attempt to fix this piece. Well, assuming I can do it on camera. It's kind of a slightly time-consuming process, but if not, we will talk about the next piece after that's finished. So I'll see you guys in a second with something. Okay, so I'm back. I haven't been able to reform this piece yet. I guess I'm not using hot enough water to do it. But in order to reform a piece, you basically boil some water. You get some really hot water. I've heard you can use a blow dryer, but I'm not sure about that one. But you dip your piece in boiling water for a couple seconds, maybe 10 or 15 seconds. You take it out and you kind of bend it to the desired shape. So the big thing are like flat pieces, and that's how you do that. But after all your pieces are dry fit and everything is how it should be, you would assume, hey, it fits, it looks good, it fits well, now we're ready for painting. No, there's still more work to be done. So the next step with resin is anytime there's panel lines on your kits, you want to go through and rescribe all of your panel lines. Maybe not all of them, but all of the smaller ones especially. Like these ones here on the piping for the heat hawk probably won't be as much of an issue. These smaller ones right here, where they're so wide, probably won't be an issue. But around the edge of the foot and these smaller ones down here and the lines on the backpack will probably be a problem. And the reason for this is because the way resin's casted, again, it's not plastic, it's a different type of material. When it dries, sometimes they leave some crud inside of your panels, and you have to kind of get that out before you paint and go through the normal process, because if you don't, when you panel line, the panel won't flow proper, or the panel wash or whatever however you decide to panel line won't flow through properly, and it'll leave kind of like grains, I guess. So for this, all I do is I take a knife and I just use the back end and I very gently run this through a couple of times. I do it one way, kind of clean it off, then I come back and I do it the other way. And you don't really want to apply any pressure here because you're not actually cutting into the part. You just want to use the knife to kind of even out all the junk that's inside of that panel line. Another thing here is there's little bits of flash on the inside of this piece. Normally I would have cleaned this up, but I just wanted to show you what it looks like, and that's easy to clean up. Just kind of drag your knife through it a couple times and get rid of all the gunk. With resin, a hobby knife is it's a pretty nice and useful tool. You can use panel scribers, so if you want to use a scriber, I know I have one. It doesn't seem to be on the desk. Oh, there it is. So, same thing applies, just very gently, with almost no pressure, just drag it through your panel lines, and you know, continue to clean them out. I would try and get as many of them as you can, ideally all of them, of course, but some kits are very panel line heavy, so for this I'm not going to worry about like these circles here on the Heat Hawk, and I'm not going to worry about the pipes. That should be no problem, but for like this is getting rescribed, so again, just very gently with almost no pressure added myself, just drag the knife through and make sure the panel line is completely cleared out and level with everything else. And the reason you go through twice is where, like, for example, I started here, this might sit lower than this, so if you drag it through this way, you get all the way through the panel line, you turn around, you can drag it through the opposite direction. It just makes sure everything is level. So that's that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and knock the rest of these out. While you're doing this, another nice thing you could do is inspect your pieces. It's not always evident the first time around when you're cleaning gates. I like how this isn't focusing all of a sudden. Where'd it go? I just saw it. There we go. There's a nice little, like a mold line, if you will, the resin equivalent thereof. So you want to make sure that all your parts are as clean as you can, and you're going to do one final inspection after you prime everything anyway. So for this, it's just as simple as sanding it out. But super easy. It takes almost no effort whatsoever. You just gotta be patient and do your best to clean everything up. Because this is one of the longer parts of the process, is cleaning all your lines up and stuff like that. So, not quite done, but I'll finish it off camera. But you can see where it's starting to look better. So, there's basically one last step for cleanup, and that is I like to pin. So we'll come back and I will show you the way, or a couple of ways that you can pin your kits, and then we will go from there. So I will see you in just a second. Alright, so for the last part of this, I'm going to show you how I go about pinning. This is actually going to be a little different than I normally do it because reasons. But what I've got here is my leg assembly. So basically, instead of just gluing this together as it is all painted, the problem that comes from that is the inside of this is painted, the outside of this is painted. You put glue on it, and you're basically just gluing the two layers of paint together, and it can pop apart really easily under the weight of the resin. So what I like to do here is I like to, I guess, kind of pin my larger limbs together. So I wouldn't necessarily pin like the knee pad onto this. You could do that, but since it's lighter and it's smaller, that's one of the scenarios where I don't mind gluing the piece directly on, because there's not going to be any weight applied to it. But where the legs especially are going to be under a certain amount of stress, and they're going to be holding a lot of weight, I'm going to want more support there. So what a pin does is you basically add something in between the two pieces that holds it in one spot, and it just adds more stability to what you're doing. So there's a lot of different ways to go about pinning, and this was really intimidating to learn at first. I was really not too sure about this when I started doing it at first, but it's really not that hard. It's more intimidating than it actually is to do. The one thing you want to make sure is that you've got your appropriate pieces on the appropriate sides, and they're usually marked, so that's not too hard to do. You just got to pay a little bit of attention. So I'm looking for some blue tack. I had some. So the idea is to run a metal rod between your pieces. Sometimes you'll run it through a couple pieces and into another. So for example, it might not be such a bad idea to run my pin here from my hip through this leg piece and into the knee, and just kind of pin these together with this in the middle, or I could do them all separately. It's up to me. I'm gonna do them together. I think it'll be really simple, and I'm going to show you a couple different ways that you could go about pinning. So the first thing is you want a drill bit and you need a pin. This, I believe, is a 1mm pin. It's just the size I like to use, and what I'm going to do is first, actually, what I'm going to be using to drill these is actually a Dremel. Normally I don't use this, but my friend Greg has my pin vise, so the show must go on, I suppose. And I want to make sure that these pieces are the ones that go together before I start doing this, because if I attach this and it's not the right pieces, it could get problematic. So the first thing I like to do is I like to pick a side where I'm going to put my pin, and for this one I'm going to put it through here, because this is going to go through this, and then the pin is going to run all the way through this and into this piece, and this is going to be the hard part right here. But I don't think I'll have too many issues. Now, my drill bit is, I believe, just a little bit larger, just a hair larger than my pin. Normally I like to run it a little bit smaller, but it doesn't really matter. It's just really preference. So like I said, I'm going to run this through like this first, and run it all the way through. So I think ideally you want to try and get it directly in the middle and get it as straight as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a shot. And that's not too bad. I think I did okay with that. And we take our brass rod and we just make sure that it fits in the hole that we drilled. Looks good. Looks pretty straight. And that works. So the next step would be to kind of try and get an approximate amount of how much you think you're going to need. And I like to go a little bit more, so just for the sake of this, I'm going to cut it maybe do here, and I just use a crappy pair of cutters. You can get wire cutters or anything like that, but this works just fine. And you can see again the piece, it fits right in where it needs to be. This is definitely going to be too long, but we can work with it. So, alright, the next step, actually I am going to cut that again, because I'd rather it be too short and do it again than, you know, mess it up. So, another thing is I'm going to try and cut it at an angle, because the first way to pin this is the way that I typically use. So what I do is I just take this point and I put the peg in, and I just press really hard, and assuming your resin is soft enough, it will leave a little indentation on the inside of the piece, which is going to be really hard to show on camera. But you might be able to see it. So, now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and take my drill again. And I'm going to try and drill right through that and into now, our pin, well, it works. So now you can immediately tell that it's a snugger fit. Alright, so what I've done is I've actually gone ahead and cut a new piece of copper, and what I'm going to do is the same thing as last time. Actually, with this one I'm going to do a slightly different thing. I'm going to use the blue tack. So what you do is you just take a piece of blue tack, get this glove off, and you just kind of knead it until it's kind of warm, I guess, because it helps it make contact with what it's sticking to a little bit better. And this is actually going to be a bit much, so I'm going to only use a little bit of this. That should work. And I'm going to stick it inside here. Now what you do with this is you line your pegs up, and you just kind of plug it in like you were plugging the piece in. Do your best to get it in there, like that. And if you pull it out nice and carefully, instead of pulling out the blue tack, you'll see where you want to drill your hole. So what I'm going to do is use that as a guide. And that didn't work very well for me. But I think Dave did it, and I think Matt Morozic did it as well in their videos, and it worked out a lot better for them. So let's go ahead and we'll go back to doing it the way that I did it before, because it seemed to work for me. This is actually a little bit too long, so we're going to cut it again. And we just push it in. Same as last time. I can't tell if I got it or not. there we go. So let's go ahead and just drill that out real quick. That should be alright for that. So now the pieces should fit together as they were intended, and you get a much stronger bond. But before they actually work as they're intended, you have to kind of glue them in place. So for this one, what I would do is glue the pin into the middle piece here instead of, well, I guess I could glue it in this too if I wanted to. Whichever works best for me, or works best for you in your case. But the pin holds all the pieces together as they should be, and you'll get a better fit just straight away than if you were to leave them alone. So that's how I pin, except with power tools instead of not power tools. So I'm running out of space on my camera, so that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you with the next work in progress. Yay. Later.